This is a public hearing for the RD10 code proposal. I want to start out here saying that, I suspect some of you are here due to this flyer that you received. Allegations made within it are at best incomplete and inaccurate. Flyer implies that commercial development is not currently permitted in the RD10 zoning areas, and this is false. RD10 currently allows a golf course, country club, nursing home, animal hospital, conference center, which could be a multi-story hotel, and soil mining to be considered by special use permit in the RD10 code. These could move forward with the code as written today. Our proposed change has suggested that conference center be changed to catering venue, which we feel is less intrusive business to maintain our rural character. We put further restrictions in place, such as access from state or county roads being required, not town roads for access, and increased setback requirements to further ensure the privacy of neighboring parcels. We have also added language to prohibit noise pollution. Any proposed commercial development must go before our planning board and be reviewed for suitability and conformity. The planning board is capable of putting additional restrictions on proposals to ensure minimal impact on neighboring parcels. We're not opening the floodgates to commercial development as the flyer suggests, but rather refining our existing code enforcement here to allow suitable commercial development of these parcels. I'll turn it over to the planner at this point.
I think we could do public hearing.
Public hearing first. Okay, have a motion then to open the public hearing, please.
Make the motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Town Clerk, you want to, let me go over our policies for public hearings here. You have 3 minutes to make your point. You have one opportunity to speak, and you cannot give your time to anyone else or share time between people. And I appreciate if you follow those policies, please. You want to call up the first? And when you do come up to speak, we'll need your name and address, please.
Good evening, Amy Hardesty, 39 Liberty Way. This proposal violates our town's master plan and is not sound law. You are striking conference centers on 100 acres for not aligning with our rural character, yet you're replacing them with catering facilities with much of the same language and allowances while reducing the required acreage to 75 acres. This is a contradiction. This amendment directly opposes and circumvents our existing town codes. Addressing these now is imperative to avoid wasting taxpayer dollars on future lawsuits. Code 21056 explicitly states hotels and motels are not permitted by special permit in Unionville. Code 21056 mandates that an inn shall only be established through adaptive reuse of structures existing as of 2002. Code 2109 forbids more than one principal building or use on a single residential lot. The language of temporary lodging within the catering facility special permit blatantly contradicts the legal framework of our town. The 229-page data document on the town website focuses largely on 1830 Brusgel Road. Code 21055 requires the board to prioritize the comfort and convenience of the immediate neighborhood. Quote, over a dozen immediate neighbors of Brusgel Road have spoken out against this. Not one has spoken in favor. The law requires you to consider their welfare paramountly. This change also clashes with our 8 p.m. noise ordinance by allowing indoor amplified music until midnight, outdoor activity until 10 p.m., so long as that noise is not heard on neighboring properties past 10 p.m. You are breaking precedent and ignoring established law. Under open meetings law, town board minutes must be posted within 2 weeks. As of today, minutes for 12 meetings dating back to May are missing from the town's website. The Zoom link for this public hearing was to be posted this morning. As of 4 p.m. today, it had not been. This is an obfuscation of these proceedings and denies the public due process. The RD10 code change affects over 30 properties in RD10. You say this is for their benefit, but not one of these property owners has spoken in favor of this change, and I think that speaks volumes. Well over $50,000 of taxpayer dollars were spent on this issue as of August. That number has likely doubled. I urge you to stop using our taxpayer dollars to press forward with a law that is in opposition of our master plan, our existing laws, and your taxpayers who have unanimously said no to this change up until this date. Lastly, through our county legislator, we offered to sit down with Supervisor Frazier to discuss these concerns. He declined to meet with his constituents despite a public hearing that is open. The town supervisor has approved the expenditure of tens of thousands of dollars on attorneys and planners, but has refused to consider the feedback and concerns of an expert in the wedding industry with nearly 20 years of experience for free. You should all be concerned by this. A draft resolution determination of no negative impact in EAF3 is already posted online, stating public comment has been considered, including those tonight. Yet this hearing is still open. You cannot have considered concerns we are only now voicing. The acreage, noise, lodging, and constituent concerns must be addressed. Your vote is not legally allowed to be predetermined. I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Mr.
No.
Mr. Fraser,
Yes.
can I make a comment to the clerk? Ms. Hardesty just mentioned the pages that were posted up from the last meeting, and I assume those will be part of the public record on this meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me.
You'll call up the next speaker? Yeah.
Jeff Reidenberg.
Hi, my name is Jeff Rivenberg. I live at 1852 Browsville Road. New to this area and location. Just recently found out about the development, so I don't know much about it. I'm here to learn. The reasons for buying up here were to have a nice rural atmosphere and scenery and stuff like that. And didn't purchase this property to live next to or have commercial, real estate. If I were to choose to do that, I would have moved, closer to Taconic or something. Again, I'm new to this, so I'm learning about it. But I guarantee I wouldn't have bought the house if knowing that there was commercial land next to me. That's about it.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Diana Weimer. Oh, you're not talking, okay. Oh, that's okay. Heidi Tucci. Okay. Mary Jane Zukowski. Mary Jane Zukowski.
Do you have to register to speak?
You don't have.
We can,
to.
after everyone that has signed up, we'll open the floor. Yep.
Good evening. I don't understand.
Just your address too, please.
Sorry. Mary Jane Zukowski. I live on 295 Highview Road. Proudly living on Highview Road. Thank you. I don't understand why we're opening up to something to make it more beneficial for somebody to come in and just change the tone of Unionvale. As I see it, I love Unionvale. I love my patch of heaven that I have in Unionvale. This proposition could mean the beginning of the end of a very, very lovely, peaceful town, which is so important to me. And I'm sorry I'm making about me, but that's what I thought part of this was, so you know how it's going to affect some of the people. I think the change, and if some big company came in or a catering business or something huge, and you're making it easier for them to slip into the 75 acres as opposed to the 100 acres. It's going to change. It's going to change traffic. It's going to change. Yes, you'll have them on the main roads, but people are going to just drive all around because they're going to see this sweet little town and they want to see a little more. And I just see that you're going to open up a can of peas there. I've been here, oh, how long have I been here? Maybe about 20 years, a little bit more. I grew up in Poughkeepsie. I've been in the healthcare, working in healthcare for, oh, since I was 12 years old, actually. I'm 72 now and still working. And I lived in New York City, and that was chaos, and I loved it. I moved to LA and Hollywood, worked there, and I loved it. More chaos. Came back to New York, loved it. One day I'm on the train, I see a penny saver, I pick it up, and a teeny little ad made me go all the way to Grand Central, get on another train and come all the way back to see a little parcel on Highview Road. I saw it, fell in love, and knew where my future was. A little tiny dwelling, trees, birds, stream.
I'm gonna ask you to wrap it up, please.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, yes. And I moved there looking for my future where I'm going to retire in peace. And we're surrounded by great other towns, nice people, and I really feel that this plan that you have in mind could ruin the loveliness of Unionvale.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ross Hursty.
Ross Hursty, I live at 17 Prey Lane. Excuse me. Yeah, I just want to echo the.
That's Town LaGrange, correct?
It's LaGrange, but also
Yeah.
partially in Unionville.
Okay.
So I just wanted to echo what some of the previous speakers had said, that basically it's a proposal that it takes away from the beautifulness of LaGrange. I strongly oppose it. I think it's going to create nothing but more traffic, noise pollution. It's going to just basically take away from, as she said, the beautifulness of Unionville. So I won't take any more time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Mackey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua Mackey, Butson, Whalen. Represent Amy and Hans Hardesty, as I think you know by now, who are residents of the town. Our clients are strongly opposed to the proposed amendment for the following reasons, which have already been articulated, but I'm going to add to that. It's fundamental that any zoning change is respectful of the town or the municipality's comprehensive plan. I think it's clear here that this proposed amendment runs afoul of your comprehensive plan. If you wanted to make this change, it has been 25 years since you adopted your comprehensive plan, you call it a master plan, you would convene a comprehensive plan review committee, take a poll from all the residents in the town about what they wanted. Do they want to change the existing vision statement or not? Do they want to take the town in a different direction or not? But you haven't done that. You've diverted that process, that lawful process, in favor of an unlawful process that's going to subject you to litigation if you pass this law. I want to remind you that your comprehensive plan vision statement clearly states the goal is to maintain the rural character of the town through the preservation of open space. This proposed amendment doesn't do that. It may be correct, Mr. Supervisor, that certain commercial activities are allowed by special permit in the RD10, but what you left out is you dropped it down from 100 acres to 75 acres. That's a big change. That opens up the floodgates for a lot more commercial development in an otherwise residential neighborhood. Spot zoning. We've talked about that before. I've attended other meetings. You've made the case for me. I don't have to really even think about it very much. You refer to it as the Freihopper law. You refer to it as Fiscaldo's project. We have that in the record.
You're incorrect there, sir.
We have a response from you to a FOIL request, which includes text messages between you, Mr. Supervisor, and the real estate broker who's listing the Freihofer property. I'll read from it. This is from March 31st of last year. Hi, Steve. Please confirm the Freihofer sale is on schedule for this Wednesday. Rose says she didn't see it on and is concerned, and I know that Joe Fiscaldo has reached his limit as well. You respond, I do have it on the agenda as old business. I'm sending an email to the attorney to confirm he's ready. I'll let you know as soon as I hear. The delays have been from attorneys and due to the threatened lawsuit.
I'm
They
going
want
to
to be
wrap it
absolutely
up.
certain, and they don't want to give the opponents any avenue to win against us. It seems you're more concerned about winning than the welfare of this community. I think this has become an ego trip. This hearing
Sir,
is
you
a
need to wrap
farce.
it up,
You've already
please.
decided what you're going to do by posting the resolution and the negative declaration before you even had time to review the letter I submitted today. This
Sir,
public hearing is
You're well
open.
beyond your time limit. I would appreciate if you would wrap it up.
The texts that you engage with, not only here, but elsewhere, and
Sir,
perhaps
you're out
other
of
members
order.
of the board
Sir,
are also in violation of the open meetings law. For
Sir.
those reasons,
sir, you're out of order.
I'm wrapping up.
And you know,
I'm
you're
wrapping
well
up.
familiar with
So
the
for
procedure.
those reasons, our clients
No,
oppose
you're
this
out of
law,
order.
as do all the others that have
Sir, your
spoken out
time-
against this.
You're
Time,
well over your time. You're out of order. I would ask you to please take your seat.
I think you're doing everything in your power.
I am
to
not
Limit
doing-
public participation in
Give me a
this
break.
process.
It's our procedure. It was passed years ago, our procedures for policies of public hearings, and you're in violation.
Thank
I
you
would
very
ask
mu-
that you take your seat, please.
Thank you for your time.
On Hardesty.
Hans Hardesty, 39 Liberty Way. I wasn't going to begin with this, but Joe Foscato was not kept on time and nor was he asked for his home address. Good evening. I am opposed to the RD10 change. Candidly, I'm shocked at the taxpayer time and money that was wasted on this. A vote of yes will lead to more. We rely on zoning for predictability and the quiet enjoyment of the commercial properties and, the residential properties that we've invested in. And this is a direct contradiction of the town and county master plans. I speak as a resident, but I'm also a commercial broker, a developer, a CCIM, an owner, and an MBA with about $1 billion in transaction experience. I can say that this will lower residential property values. Loud, high-traffic event spaces and lodging have obvious negative impacts for neighborhoods. Residential brokers have already told you this, and I echo it. Also, this will lower tax revenue in the RD10. Multiple single-family homes generate more and consistent revenue than one event venue that is likely to go out of business. I am calling for a qualified third-party tax consultant to analyze the revenue impact before a vote. The setbacks are only 200 and 500 feet. This is a joke. Mr. Supervisor, your own driveway is almost 700 feet. Imagine sound equipment, crowds, 200 vehicles with engines and headlights on past the noise ordinance in your driveway. That is what you are asking for us to tolerate. This is also a public safety issue. The police and fire department are going to be called constantly. This ignores our noise ordinance and it burdens our rural roads, which were never engineered for event traffic, deliveries, transient guests, or drunk driving. A formal independent study must be done on the entire district, all RD10, and a hard look is required. We started this process hearing from event professionals that these uses require more than 100 acres, reducing it to 75. So one property still for sale on Brusco Road is spot zoning, and it shows a disregard for the public comments. Finally, there are procedural issues. First, residents have been left in the dark without proper notice. Without minutes posted, we do not even know where you are posting these in the newspapers. And there's more. Since the last discussion, the town has changed this and reclassified the zoning and modified SECRA substantially. These are substantial major actions, and yet the town is bypassing the county referral GML section 239-M. This change has major traffic and environmental impacts in our area, and only one property keeps being noted. I expect the county to be notified and exercise its oversight of substantial changes. By circumventing this, you have omitted vital information, and the county is unaware of you fast-tracking a change without a hard look mandated by law. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? That's it. Sir, you wanted to speak?
Yes.
Just your name and address, please.
My name is William Nolan. I live at 2363 Clove Road. I've lived here for 37 years. I've been on the town board. I've been involved in all the planning sessions and in the master plan that was done about 25 years ago. This action is ill-conceived and rushed. And it's opposed to the master plan, and the town has not been properly informed, and you're exposing yourselves to an Article 778 action. I think it's a very risky procedure to be taking that will only harm this town. When I was on the board, we were able to prevent several things like this happening before, and the town is a lot better off for it. One of the actions would have cut down all the trees along Clove Road. When we asked the pipeline people, how many trees would you have to cut down? He said a lot. I said, how many? He said, a lot. I said, how many? He said, every one. So the same thing is true with the compressor station. The noise level in the town would have been 110 decibels up and down the town. Every home would have been affected. This action will affect every home in the town. My wife was almost killed on an accident on Brusgal Road. It's a very dangerous road. You put something there and you will increase the risk to everyone who passes. So I think this is a very ill-conceived, rushed. The town was not properly informed, and I think you should put this aside and never take it up again.
Hey, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Chris Gamage. I live on Waterbury Hill Road. I've lived here since I was about 9 months old. Today I'm 31 years old. My parents and family used to live in a busy and dangerous area of Queens, New York. They moved to Unionville for a quieter and safer life back in 1995. I'm afraid that this type of zoning change will only open the door to more commercialization of our area. I don't believe Unionville needs this commercialization. I believe that Unionville is beautiful and should be preserved the way that it currently is. I would like to raise my own family and kids in today's Unionville, and not the potential commercialized version of Unionville that I'm afraid the zoning may allow. I believe a large portion of people who live in this area would agree with me had they been properly informed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir. I saw the one in the front right here. Yeah. Yep.
I'll just be quick. I'm Colin Martin. I'm 31 Liberty Way. I just wanted to go on record that I formally object to the code change.
Okay. I saw another hand.
I'm Mary Tannen. I live on Canby Road. I've lived there for 50 years. We moved here and lived out in a rural area, and this is why we picked it. I'm not close to this particular development, but going from 100 acres down to 75 is going to affect the whole town, and I'm totally against that. If this were in my backyard, I'd be up in arms. It's going to ruin a wedding venue. Is noisy. I think anybody who's been to an outdoor wedding, you don't stop it at 10 o'clock because that's the town ordinance. You've got 100 or 200 people there listening to music and dancing. I'll probably hear it over on Canby Road. I think changing the rules just to satisfy one piece of property is not what this town has been about, and I don't like seeing this happen.
Anyone else?
Vicky Pittman, Brusgal Road, the dangerous Brusgal Road. I'm really disappointed in this town board. I trust all of you to have our best interests in mind. And, I found the information on the website. It took me a long time to find it. And then I've spent today reading it telling myself, you know, you're a smart girl. You can get through all this. And I got through 128 pages of all this legal stuff, trying to figure out what would possess you to think that this was a good idea. Already like just get rid of the convention center, but then to go add a catering facility, you know, like I've always felt pretty safe living here with the zoning that, you know, there's no bars, there's no restaurants, there's no nightclubs, there's all these things to protect this, but putting in a catering facility allows all those things, a free open bar probably, in our neighborhood. And if you don't live on Bruswell Road, you don't know how dangerous it is. And I say that every time I get up here. Going through there, I found 2 times it said that you guys have already adopted this. 2 times it states in those papers that I made myself read today. And, you know, I don't know. So this is a done deal already. All of us up here just find out about it because nobody notified me except for some people, other people in the neighborhood. You know, a previous supervisor would put a note in my mailbox and let me know if there was something that was going to be affecting me and my property. You guys haven't done that. But reading through, I found this thing, the KARC memorandum that's in there where they offered advice and suggestions from January 28th, 2025. And it suggests that the planning board, you know, case by case basis, because this isn't just that property there, this is all of RD10. And if you look, our town is RD10, most of it. So this affects everybody, not just us living here next to it. But anyway, in that memorandum, it also states, and they suggest that you put this in here. And, you know, I'm a little confused because it says that you already adopted it. So I'm not really sure about that, but that there should be a yearly review by the planning board and by the zoning board to make sure that whatever facility it goes in and gets approved, that it is following all the rules. And, you know, I read this, I don't know if this is 2 and 3, or if you've already approved 1, like, I don't know what you're doing, but there's nothing in here. So I want to know if those recommendations by the firm that you hired to consult with you, if it's in there and being taken under advisement
I
and
gotta ask you to wrap it up.
consideration. I'm done.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Going to pause for a second. Paul, you can come up in here in a second. We're at 7:30, which is our meeting time to start. I just want to open our meeting, and the public hearing will continue into the meeting. So we will open the Unionville Town Board meeting for February 4th, 2026. I'd like to make an agenda amendment, please, to consider the resolution of full secret report and to move the phone copy or discussion to after our executive session. Have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Paul? And folks just joining us, we're in the session with the public hearing for our RD10 code proposal.
Good evening. I'm Paul Canterbury, 1811 Bruswell Road. I just want to go on record, like the rest of them, saying I oppose this. As of the last time I was up here discussing this, I had only 4 accidents outside my house. As of a couple weeks ago, we had another one. Right across the street, took out electric for, I don't know, a couple hours, maybe half. Drunken driving. Okay, this is only going to increase it. It's going to make it more dangerous. I'm up here selfishly because I'm right on that corner. I'm a blind driveway there. I see it all the time. People want to come flying down there, and I got my family, my grandkids coming out on that road, and I just am totally against this. I want the board to really consider people here tonight who live across from that, what it does to us. We are your constituents. We voted for you guys, and we'd like the same respect back to us in voting against us. So thank you for the time. Please consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Want to open with considering the resolution here for, oh, wait, want to speak? Yes.
Ms. Quinn.
Good evening. I am Natalie Quinn from KARC. Give me a second while I get myself situated. All right, so I'm going to continue the conversation from the last meeting where we reviewed the part 2 and part 3. I think based on the public comments and kind of the conversation, it will be helpful to kind of start with the same intro that I did the last time. So apologize if this is somewhat repetitive. But so the review of this local law did start in October of 2024. The local law has not been adopted. There's been multiple versions that have been introduced, revised, and then reintroduced to the board. So every time there were significant changes to the local law, changes made to it, it had to be reintroduced. So nothing was adopted as of yet. And I will also note that in early 2024, there was a sketch site plan for a property, the Fuscaldo Freihofer property, that started kind of going through the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. And that was for something that was going to be, the zoning officer said this is closest to a conference center, right? So when that review started, that application has since then, as was discussed, been abandoned. The property owner is maybe selling the property, doing whatever. What that did was it raised issues, right, with the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, that there was not sufficient language surrounding conference centers in terms of how those uses should be regulated and how the size or impacts of it should be regulated. And it was noted that those bodies could use additional help through language being added to the code. And that is how this local law kind of rose from one parcel to consideration of the permitted uses in the zoning district, which is the opposite of spot zoning. Right. I actually have never seen a case more opposite of spot zoning. You saw this one parcel, it identified larger issues within the zoning district and permitted uses within the district, and the town board took that up to have that conversation. In terms of, why, so you have a memo from us already explaining why we believe the considered amendments are in line with the comprehensive plan. As has been noted, the comprehensive plan does talk about kind of preventing subdivision of large parcels, talks about preservation of natural resources, it talks about preservation of environmentally sensitive areas in the town, which I'll go through. We're going to go through the part 3 and I'll talk about each one of those environmentally sensitive aspects individually. But I will say that this is still in line with the comprehensive plan because the comprehensive plan also talks about preserving agricultural uses, right? And looking at wedding venues or alternative revenue sources for farmland, for agriculture, is actually supported by Dutchess County as one of the means to preserve agricultural land is by giving farmers other ways that they can make their land produce revenue, right? So there was an alternative. There was kind of, I think one of the speakers talked about this could be subdivided in 1 million and, 10 different individual single family homes could be built here. That's actually opposite from what the zoning district is encouraging and what your comprehensive plan is encouraging, right? So this is a way of kind of permitting. There's commercial uses that are already permitted in the zoning district. This is a means of permitting uses that are compatible with this area, with these agricultural uses and these natural areas, while still regulating them. And we're going to go through talking about all the regulations, right? So as was previously noted, there is a number of commercial uses already permitted in the zoning district that could be built today. And I just want to go through really quickly kind of the difference of conference center as it's permitted and the proposed catering facility and how those regulations kind of change from what is allowed right now to what is being proposed as being permitted, right? So right now for conference center, in terms of rooms, how many lodging rooms you can have, there is no maximum. For the catering facility proposed use, it's limited to 10. In terms of max length of stay, how long people can be staying at this conference center that is currently permitted, 7 days, where for the catering facility, it is limited now to a maximum of 4 days. In terms of max floor area, 5% of the land, so under conference center, 5% of the land included in the proposal. So when you have a 100-acre parcel, 5% of that land is 5 acres, right? So that's what you're limited in terms of your max floor area. Under catering facility, the main facility is limited to 6,000 6,000 square feet, and the lodging facility is limited to 5,000 square feet. The lodging facility under conference center is not limited. There's no square foot limit to that. For minimum lot area, yes, that does change from 100 to 75. That was a means to be, there was a marginal increase in the number of properties that can now be included in this. And this expands, again, this use that is supported by the comprehensive plan and the master plan of preserving agricultural land. It does make a few more properties eligible for that. But I focusing on that and then not focusing on all the limitations that is being put on this use, I think is an unfair review of the code. Access, I will say the access is maintained, right? For conference centers, it does say state and county highway or town roadway. We have changed that. So it's still state and county. We have removed the town roadway. So that does limit. Building locations in terms of setbacks under conference center, it's only 150 feet from the property line or 250 feet from a neighboring residence. The catering facility, that has been increased to 200 feet from the property line and 500 feet from the existing exterior wall of a neighboring residence. So in all senses, setbacks have been increased for catering facility. Parking requirements, there's no limitation on that, and there's no allowance for land banking under the conference center where those provisions are kind of discussed in terms of parking that's required and the ability to land bank to kind of preserve where possible kind of paving of land for parking and maintain the natural resources. So I just wanted to go through those kind of changes from one to the other. And again, say that you do have a memo from us talking about how this is in line with the comprehensive plan. So I won't go through that again. I just will say that, professionally, I do disagree that this action is in any way in conflict with your comprehensive plan. I do believe that this furthers the preservation of open space and gives the planning board and the town more ability to review site plan applications for commercial uses in this district and make sure that they are contextual with the open space nature of this district. And does allow to the point of predictability. The zoning is supposed to be adding predictability. That is absolutely correct. This adds way more predictability to how these uses are going to turn out than the code as it currently stands. So that's it for intro. I think where the board is now is you are looking at the Part 3 EAF narrative, right? So the last meeting, we went over the Part 1, which is that form is filled out by us as the consultant saying it gives you information on the proposed action, which is a legislative action to change the code. We also went through the Part 2. The Part 3 document is really just giving you all the narrative and explaining why you answered Part 2 the way you did as a board. And so I think it's really helpful because it does take that long record. Again, this has not been a quick process. This has been an over a year-long process. And what the Part 3 EAF narrative does is it does take a lot of that language, all the different memos that came from KRC, that came from the engineering consultants, that came from Dutchess County Transportation Council, the natural resource inventory, and it puts all that information into kind of concise narrative explaining why we answered the Part 2 the way we did. So I will go through that. I'll start with the first one of kind of being very specific, and then you'll see that the language is somewhat kind of repetitive in some ways, but I'll go through the first one. So number one is the impact on land, right? In your Part 2 form, you had to look at, will this action have impacts on land, right? And so this is a legislative action. So this language you'll see kind of repeated through the Part 3AF. So although the proposed legislative action does not involve physical disturbance, land disturbance, it is noted that some of the parcels within the district, which may be affected by this legislative action, contain lands that meet the criteria of the Part 2 EAF. It is acknowledged that any potential future land development applications which may arise after the adoption of this legislation would be subject to a seeker review based on the merits of an individual land development application and at that time, and the threshold impacts would be accordingly identified and addressed based on that. I will note that and I'm going to talk about a few other things. So with land, we also then went through in the Part 1 or the Part 3 narrative to talk about things that we are adding to the zoning language that will help reduce impact on land. For one, local law number 1 of 2026, which you have before you, allows land banking of parking. So this provision was included to minimize full and immediate build out of potential parking areas. The land bank parking provision reduces land disturbance by limiting clearing, grading, and paving to only the number of parking spaces currently needed, allowing remaining areas to remain in natural and landscape condition unless further demand requires expansion. This approach avoids unnecessary impervious surface and preserves more open space on the site, right? So again, going back to this preservation of open space is key to this. Minimum lot area for such a use is not less than 75 feet or 75 acres, sorry, and requires that access to the facility shall be from state and county roads. This requirement further protects land within the district because it only 25 parcels satisfy above this criteria. I believe that's 35, sorry, correction.
I'm sorry, are we still?
No, I'm the town's consultant. Oh,
So you're a consultant.
I will go slower. So
No.
I'm going to continue speaking to the
Yeah,
board.
folks, she is guiding the board through this procedure.
So moreover, the special permit criteria for catering facilities specified in local
Wait,
law.
whoa.
Like to know what is happening. You asked us in the public hearing, just let us know.
Right, we asked you, the public hearing portion, we opened the floor to the residents here to speak. I'm sorry? We have not closed the public hearing yet, no.
So I am the consultant to the town board. KRC is the planning consultant. They opened the public hearing to hear public comment.
You're paid by.
And I am, yes, correct. And I am going through the part three seeker document that they have to consider. It is important that I go through this with them first so that they can take the public comments and what I'm saying into consideration, and they make decisions after that. They make decisions whether to close the public hearing, and they make decisions whether to act on the seeker for the local law. So it is important that I do this while the public hearing is still open, and the board can choose to either adjourn the public hearing to another meeting, or they can choose to close it. So that's why it's still open at this time.
It's just that there's a lot of new information being provided right now, including the statement, which I heard that only a marginal number of properties will be affected by this.
This is not
What
it.
is that number?
This information has
You
been
use that
provided.
Information, the sequence.
No,
All of this,
In it, so the public have time to digest it and respond, but instead you put it at the end. That's the problem.
I'm reiterating, again, this document is a summary of everything that was in the public record. I am not reading anything here.
Jim, speak for a minute.
Yep, go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion? Number one, Ms. Quinn is here, and it is during the public hearing session. However, her function is to essentially act as a consultant to the board. And so she is taking the board through this because, as you know, it's the obligation of this board to take a hard look at all of the issues before addressing the seeker. So my suggestion would be that she be allowed to continue. And perhaps at the end of that, if there are other people who wish to speak, I'm sure you would let them speak. And if some of the people who have already spoken wish to make additional comments, you might consider letting them make them.
We can do that. What I will do is when she finishes her presentation, I'll open the floor. Those that have not commented yet may come up and make comments if you wish. Those who have commented, you are permitted to ask questions, but I'm not going to allow further comments.
Okay, so we're still on part one. And again, this is the, do you know what this document is titled? It's posted online, the part three narrative. Is it part three EAF? That's the okay, draft, that's online. So that's kind of what I'm reading from right now that was posted. And again, is a summary of that long record document from the past year plus months that this has been considered. So again, we're still in kind of impacts on land, which is the first and primary question of seeker. So one of the final paragraphs here is saying, moreover, the special permit criteria for catering facility that is specified in the local law before the board requires that projects, and this is language I meant, preserve existing buildings through adaptive reuse and or scenic and natural areas of important to the community. So that's a requirement of this special permit that could be granted to this use. Requires that formal and informal landscaping, stone walls, entrance gates, and similar features must be preserved whenever feasible. Requires that new construction shall be sited so as to have a minimum impact on fields, meadows, and woodlands. Specifies that major grading and or changing of topography shall not be permitted. That's a shall. requires that unique natural areas and open spaces such as streams, ponds, marshes, steeply sloped areas, woodlands, et cetera, shall be preserved. And then again, limits, limits the disturbance and like footprint of buildings. So again, all of that is in line with the comprehensive plan and in line with the intent of the RD10 district to preserve these open spaces, right? So what this code and how it's written is really looking to adaptively reuse existing structures on these large parcels that are largely agricultural or farm parcels, reuse those for these facilities, and then limit any kind of grading or disturbance to natural areas. I will say each one of these sections, even though the site plan for the one property that kind of prompted the consideration of this has been abandoned, the part 3 narrative does talk, we did, from what the information that was provided from that initial sketch plan, we did take a look at that application and kind of note that language within here too. So that does come into each one of these. Number 2 is impact on geological features. And again, much of the same language that I just read in terms of protection of limiting grading, protection of natural areas, that is again kind of repeated in the geological features and kind of to the discussion that this local law will not have a negative impact on geological features. Part 3 is will the local law have impacts on surface waters? And again, very similar to land and geological features, the proposed local law and the special permit criteria that are included in there require that projects preserve existing scenic and natural areas important to the community. So that will be something the planning board will be looking at with each individual site plan. And again, requires that unique natural areas and open spaces such as streams, ponds, marshes, steeply sloped areas, woodlands shall be preserved. Impact on groundwater. So again, this is a local law. We're looking at a legislative change. So this does not authorize this change, this action in front of you does not authorize the specific use of groundwater. But any future individual development applications, obviously that is part of their seeker review. Well, they have to note based on the square footage they're proposing, number of units, number of space, they'll have to say exactly how much water they're proposing and where they plan to get it from and justify that in their own seeker review. Impact on flooding. The proposed legislative action does not entail physical disturbance. Again, any future development project would be evaluated for flood zone compliance where necessary. We did attach some maps from Dutchess County Natural Resource Inventory illustrating where the 100-year floodplain and the 500-year floodplain go through the town of Unionvale. But again, because this is a legislative action, there's no significant adverse impact to flooding from the proposed action itself. Impact on air. So the proposed action does not include a state regulated air emission source. So there's no impact from that. Impact on plant and animals. Again, there's no immediate disturbance to vegetation and wildlife habitat from the proposed action. Since it's legislative and individual developments, proposals may affect habitats and such impacts would be addressed and reviewed by the planning board. Again, through their own seeker review, when you can actually have the detail of what are you guys are very lucky in Dutchess County to have the natural resource inventory that kind of starts to identify where there's essential habitats in the county. And then the planning board uses that to have individual applicants dive deeper and do their own habitat reviews when those projects come up before them. Impact on agricultural resources. So the RD10 zoning district contains properties that are in agricultural district number 21. We attached an exhibit of that. The proposed action is a text amendment to the RD10 zoning district, which is a legislative action. Therefore, no direct physical disturbance on agricultural land is associated. However, local law number 1 of 2026, which is in front of you, was intended to remove the use of conference centers, which is a permitted use, and instead include a specially permitted use for catering facilities. And this is to provide an opportunity for agricultural landowners to diversify income streams and support continued viability of farming. The addition of catering facilities as a permitted use is intended to support agricultural adjacent and farm-based enterprises, such as working farms hosting weddings, farm-to-table venues, and small-scale retreats. We went through, again, in terms of the language that's already in there, in terms of the special permit criteria about preserving kind of open fields and things like that. So the goal is not to have these agricultural lands kind of take these fields and develop on them, right? That's in the code written in there that is not the intent. Number 9 in your EAF is impact on aesthetic resources. Let me just say, I'm not going to keep repeating the same thing, but again, the language is in there. I think what we talk about here specifically is, the special permit criteria Whenever feasible, new construction has to be cited. So to have minimum impact, again, on fields, meadows, and woodlands. So I think that will help with the aesthetic, kind of the existing aesthetics of the district. Major grading and topography is not permitted. The setbacks are increased so that these uses have to be further from the property lines and from adjacent properties. We are now placing limitations on how big buildings can be, which is not under the current code. And then also the criteria sets requirements relating to setback of buildings and parking lots and requires that adequate screening to preserve the rural character of the district and reduce visual impacts of any future developments. Number 10 in your EAF is impact on historical and agricultural resources. So the action being considered does not disturb historical and agricultural resources. The special permit criteria require that projects preserve existing buildings through adaptive reuse or scenic, and also requires that they preserve scenic or natural areas that are important to the community. And for those kind of protections that are baked into the code, we believe that the proposed action does not create any significant adverse impact for historical and archaeological resources. Impact on open space and recreation. So seeker is very specific that it's looking at within an adopted kind of open space, municipal open space plan. So the proposed action is not located within an area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan. We will note that the language of your comprehensive plan does talk about preservation of open space, right? And we've already kind of gone through why we believe this code furthers that. Number 12 for the EAF is impact on critical environmental areas. There will be no impact. There are no critical environmental areas or CEAs. There are none of those designated within the town of Unionville, so no impact there. Impact on transportation, I will kind of go through this one a little bit more slowly and read the language because I know this traffic kind of came up a lot. So a comparative planning analysis was included in the record. It's our KARC memo dated March 14th of 2025. Demonstrates that catering facilities are anticipated to generate significantly fewer trips during peak periods than conference centers, which the proposed amendment eliminates as a permitted use. So this suggests a potential net reduction in traffic impacts, which could occur now. The local law further restricts catering facilities to parcels with direct access to county and city routes. Parcels with frontage on County Route 9, 21, 24, and 90 are included. These county roads carry posted speed limits of 55 miles per hour, and based on Dutchess County Traffic Viewer, accommodate 1,000 to 5,000 vehicle average daily trips. The Dutchess County data demonstrates that county roads that serve the RD10 district currently carry only a fraction of their available capacity, how these roads are graded in terms of the capacity they can carry, with current average daily trip volumes ranging in the hundreds to low 2,000s compared to practical capacities of 10,000 to 12,000 range. The roadway system has substantial reserve capacity to accommodate additional trips generated by new uses in the RD10 district. These conclusions are statistically supported by data analyzed and detailed in our memo from September 17th, 2025, and are included as an attachment to this document. In addition, the proposed local law provides the authority to the planning board to require a traffic study certified by a qualified professional and reviewed by the town engineer or planner. And such studies will be used to set appropriate limits on individual facility capacity, determine appropriate parking, land-based parking, and ensure that access points maintain safe line of sight. So line of sight is a mandatory criteria under New York State DOT for review on all state roads, and the county also follows those regulations. You also have a memo from Renia Engineering Design. So they're the town's engineering consultant that confirms the local law has been thoughtfully structured to avoid adverse traffic impacts. So then I promise I'm almost done. I'm getting till near the end. So number 14 is impact on energy. We do not believe the proposed local law, the legislative action, has a direct impact on energy. Similarly, each individual project, once you kind of know the square footage and how many units, those gets evaluated in their individual seeker. Impact on noise, odor, and light. I will take a moment for this because I know there's been comments about noise. So the legislation does cite the town's noise ordinance, right? So if you go to section 15 of the proposed local law, it specifically says that proposed catering facilities must demonstrate compliance with noise performance standards as outlined in 210-24A, which is your noise ordinance. So anything in here is in addition to that, right? So, and what your noise ordinance says is at your property line from certain periods of time, you can't have more than 50 decibels, which is still noise, but you can't have more than 50 decibels from point A to point B. And then after 8 p.m., you can't, sorry, it's 60 during the day, 50 after 8 p.m. So that's kind of the standard that is there that this legislation puts in place. Then there's additional regulations that are put on noise coming from outdoor use and occupancy. So I think that's maybe what was being referenced in terms of, but again, the underlying is that the town code must be met, and what the, just real quick, what the kind of indoor or the outdoor use regulations say is a little bit stricter in that it says indoor activities may not be operated prior to 10 a.m. or later than midnight, but indoor amplified sound must be controlled such that no noise is heard on adjacent properties prior to 10 a.m. or after 10 p.m. So that's no noise from indoor activity, right? So that is reducing what your current, or that is being more strict than the current code, which allows 50 decibels at that time. It's saying no noise from indoor activity. So you can't have amplified music that is kind of like going out the windows of this building, right? And I enforcement is always key to these things, and I will say that, and there is an enforcement component, but that's how the noise ordinance is currently implemented as well. There was additional lighting regulations attached to the proposed special permit use that are in the code. And the planning board will be authorized to require a lighting plan for all outdoor lighting. And we put some specific regulations in there in terms of turned off after closing, located, fully shielded and directed, so no direct light falls onto outside property lines. So we took regulations that are pretty standard in rural areas across Dutchess County and kind of the Hudson Valley in terms of regulating light. So we added those in. Those weren't currently in the code. Number 16, I promise there's 18. I'm on 16. So number 16 is impact on human health. The proposed action does not introduce any uses known to generate hazardous materials or public health risks. So there's no impact. Consistency with the community plans. I'm not going to go through it because I think we talked about this at length in terms of how this aligns, how we believe this aligns with your comprehensive plan. But there is a whole section in here kind of reiterating and summarizing kind of what I started at the top of this conversation with. And then number 18 is consistency with community character. So the proposed action is consistent with community character in the RD10 zoning district. The proposed action is not replacing or eliminating existing facilities, structures, or areas of historical importance. And the proposed action will not directly create demand for community services, these are kind of the DEC's considerations in this criteria. As the catering facility use is replacing a more intensive use of conference center, the demand for community services may be equal or lesser than what is currently permitted. So again, it's kind of a reduction from what is there. So again, this is a document. It's 12 pages. And again, this is a kind of a summary of all the analysis that has been done over the past year. So nothing in here is new. It is just, again, summarizing that in relation to DEC's criteria for these 18 areas. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from town board, and then I can move myself away so we can go back to public hearing.
Any of you have any questions for her?
When you say you can't change the topography, you can also get a mining permit in town.
For this use, if you're proposing for this use,
Yeah.
you cannot be changing the topography. So if you were, if you were going, I didn't look at your mining regulation.
Yeah.
So I'd have to look at those specifically, but for this use that's in there, that major changes to topography are not permitted.
Okay. But it says shall. So is there a criteria that you're basing shall on?
Shall.
Yeah. What does shall mean? What is changing the topography? I mean, you can put a shovel in the ground and change the topography.
I mean, you wouldn't be putting a shovel in the ground not be changing topography. So if you have a grade change, right?
I know,
If you have
just saying, I mean,
an example would be like,
if you were going to say shall,
you shall not significantly change topography.
okay. So
I mean,
what's the criteria for significant? I'm just saying, you're going to say shall, that some criteria for significant
Unfortunately,
If
that's
you
not
get-
how zoning works, right? Because if you had a shall or should and you put criteria on each one of those, I think you would have, first of all, 1,000-page documents right here. Right? And there's a reason why you have planning boards. I think shall is the strongest language you can use, right? So there's
the strongest.
So there's shoulds, which gives a little bit more flexibility. So I think the planning board is going to have very stringent criteria. Again, they're a discretionary board, so they will get to kind of discuss with the advice of the town's attorneys what that means. But the shall is the strongest language you can use in that case in terms of shall not change major topography. So I would say they would probably first start by identifying what is the major topography on this site. Are there bluffs? Are there hills? Are there kind of tree lines and stuff? I think they would start by identifying those and then those areas would be off limits for grading. I think that's how a planning board would go about that.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that has a question for the planner?
You said this is not spot zoning. My
Yeah.
name's Hans Hardesty. You said this is not spot zoning, then
Yeah.
why not move it back to 100 acres?
I think the decision to look at, I think what was originally proposed was 50 acres in the local law. So we did encourage that to be increased to 75 in our memo. The current regulation for a much larger use of conference center is 100 acres. Correct. And I think it was by reducing the size of the use and then right, because conference center, as I went through in that kind of comparison, is a much larger use. It could be a much larger. Yes, I would argue could be a much larger use. And so in looking at right, you're trying to balance 75 acres is still a very large parcel. And you're trying to balance kind of this larger parcel preservation of larger parcels, which is encouraged through the comprehensive plan by also allowing uses that can be applied and actually used, right? So I think a minimal decrease of that with all the additional regulations that were put in place was not seen to be a significant impact.
But two quick questions. One following up on Kevin Barron's question. Topography, even the property that I mentioned the most on Russell Road is on the Sprout Creek watershed and very close and upgrade from the Zone 1 aquifer. And it does have additional wildlife protection on it. I thought you said there was none. So I think that should be further considered before a vote is taken.
Sorry, say that again. So because the parcel of the one that was abandoned, right?
Allegedly.
Okay, but when they come forward, I think everything you've noted there is going to be and is encouraged by the language of this local law to be considered. What do you mean?
You said there's no environmental, you said there are no environmental impacts. Given this one property, let alone all the other.
You referenced that property from saying.
Yeah, no, so the language that's in here when you're talking about that property comes to, so let's look, plants and animals is what you were talking about, or water? Which one were you talking about? Yeah, so. Oh, yeah. So the question is that there was the parcel that prompted this conversation of this change to the local law, that there are environmentally sensitive aspects to this parcel, right? And that the statement was misstated that I said there's no impacts to that. I think the language that is throughout this document is that development on that parcel. Right now, we had a sketch level plan that did not have all the necessary information, and then it was abandoned and pulled, right? So we don't have an application with the kind of information that the planning board would ask for. Those aspects would absolutely be reviewed under the individual environmental seeker for that parcel when that came through. And I think that is stated throughout this part 3. Let's see, development. I want to go to the one on impacts for this, and I'll kind of just read you what is here so that we can be clear on the language. So according to Dutchess County Environmental Mapper, this is under the plants and animals section. The Freiheifer parcel does not contain any rare plants or animals, but may provide habitat for the Indiana bat. If the project were pursued, the design would be subject to additional review by the planning board and New York State DEC. So I don't think we're stating that there's no impact.
I think she's answered your question
Yeah.
at this point.
This is a separate question. I was currently on the Dutchess County Planning Board. The directions in the master plan do specifically say secondary effects such as noise, light, and vehicle traffic in residential zones. They don't want that. So I think that there's a total discrepancy in what you're saying. It just doesn't matter. I don't understand how I don't understand.
You have a question?
Yeah, the question is, how are you ignoring the fact that the directions, particularly regarding the preservation of rural character and management, secondary effects such as noise, light, and vehicle traffic in residential zones are in the master plan?
Those are impacts of any use, right? Whether it's active farmland or it's a catering facility or it's an inn that's permitted or a conference center. So I'm not saying that those wouldn't be considered. And in fact, there's language in the local law that allows the planning board to ask for traffic impact analysis, that allows the planning board to ask for a lighting plan. That's all in there. So that's anticipated exactly as you're stating, that Dutchess County is concerned about these secondary effects of these types of uses. So we have given the planning board in this language, in this local law, the language to review that thoroughly, more thoroughly than what currently exists in your code. So I think Dutchess County Planning would agree that Dutchess County Planning would agree that that is absolutely a balancing act, right? You are trying to allow uses that are appropriate for this area and that can facilitate farmers and agricultural lands to stay active, but have a secondary source of revenue. You absolutely have to consider all those impacts, and the language has been added to the code to actually give more criteria and more kind of thought process to those shoulds and shalls than what currently exists. So I
Is
think.
there anyone else with a question?
Were factual basis for the conclusion that only a marginal number of properties will be impacted by.
So Dutchess County Planning did an analysis for us actually, where they looked at parcels. They did with GIS, they looked at the parcels of certain sizes and they looked at which ones were touching state and county roads. So that's the factual analysis of where that came from.
So how many
And those maps are included in here.
that listed in the package that you were given?
Corrected at the 30.
They're eligible.
It's attached in one of the memorandum, and I believe it's 25.
Okay, I bumped it up to 35 just because I thought I wanted to be safe, but I think we can pull that exact number. Town may want to consider, I have my first local law, I think my first memo where we recommend it go up to 75. And then maybe after when it was maybe 35 parcels, and then when we bumped it up to 75, it got reduced to 25. Okay.
I have a second question. This is more for the board. Would the board consider postponing its vote tonight so that the public has an opportunity to digest this information that's been provided? I know it's been stated that it was previously provided, but that's actually not true. What we just heard, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with the process, is the consultant walking through all the secret questions for the board. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I just heard.
And what we did at the last meeting as well.
So that is new information, how we're going to advise how to answer those questions in the secret. That is new. And I think that the board would be prudent for the board to give the public an opportunity to digest that and comment on it. This is a lot of information.
This information has been available online for quite some time.
Well, the narrative, though, it's I actually understand to some extent. I think that the narrative and the explanation, the details of it, are important. But I don't want the board to postpone the vote tonight.
I have a truly genuine question just from the board.
The questions are to go to the planner. If you have questions on what she had asked. Well, don't expect an answer.
I got here, so I got stuck. The consultant noted that her statements were a matter of her opinion. She's either a lawyer or expert in events. She was paid by this board. So my question to you all, in complete heartfelt earnest, is why is her paid for opinion more valuable than that of an expert in the specific commercial use? And more importantly, your decision, so that unanimously found and said we did not want this in our town.
I can provide the
That's
town board with my
fine.
resume at
I don't
some
think
point.
that's a question that needs to be answered. Does anyone else have a question out there? Yes. Is it a question or would you like to comment? The comments will hold until she has answered all her questions. Yes.
Hi.
I have questions about RD10.
Okay.
This is the change that will happen for all of RD10.
Yes, it is a text amendment to the RD10 district.
All right, and how many acres in
It's about 2/3, I believe, of the town. If you look at a map, you've seen the maps on the at the yeah, it's the green shaded portion of the maps. I meant to bring one here and didn't, but it's about, oh, we have one here. Darren, can you zoom in on this?
Oh, he's getting,
Huh?
the case giving away.
Okay, well, if this will help where everybody, can you zoom in on that? All of that green portion is RD10. I can't give you acres, you know, that required extensive calculations.
If you
But
want to continue the conversation, the part that's maybe pertinent to that, we can, we do not have the exact acreage. I think by looking at that, you can see it's maybe
a
roughly
good
a
portion of the
third.
town.
Yeah, so this isn't,
Okay, so is it? That's completely irrelevant. So I also live in RD10. So, with the way this is being written, can parcels be combined? So in other words, if you had, I don't know, 6 10-acre parcels and a few 5-acre parcels, could you combine them to be 1 75-acre parcel?
under current regulations and the proposed, you are always permitted to merge parcels.
And there's a procedure for that as well.
Yeah.
Are you recommending to the town to limit the number of potential catering or conference centers?
There's language within the regulations that I think limits that, right? So we've kind of gone through in terms of size of the parcels is going to limit that. Access to state and county roads is also going to limit what parcels those apply to. That's in that language is in the local law, like the language of the local law that's being adopted is those criteria, right? Which naturally limits how many parcels could apply for this.
If it's being adopted, can you tell me what number or where am I finding it?
So that's the 25 that we were just going over. It starts in where the original analysis was memo from March 14th, 2025. That's where we reviewed and we talked about, and it's on second to last page of that memo, talks about impact on number of eligible sites. So when the lot area was reduced to 50 acres, we've now increased it to 75, but it was 50 when we first started reviewing it. The proposed local law will increase the number of eligible parcels as the boundaries currently stand, right? Because you're right, people can merge or subdivide parcels as they please. It went from 16 to 37. And then as Hannah was noting, when we reduced that.
It's in your memorandum from April 21st, 2025. It's attached as 2 different exhibits. One is the list of 25 parcels that are eligible based on size, and the other is a diagram showing both the parcels that are 75 acres and connected to a state or county road. So these are the eligible parcels.
And that is on the website?
Yes, it's been part of the public record since April 21st.
Okay. You know, there's one thing if this succeeds, but what's the plan if this fails? You know, what do you do with this kind of development if it doesn't work out? What else is it open to?
What we're considering tonight is adoption to the local law, right? It is a change to allow this. In the same way that you can never predict any use of whether someone will start to build a home and then go bankrupt and the house will sit there, whether someone will start a restaurant business and then that restaurant business doesn't make it through the first 5 years, right? That's not really pertinent to the local law that's being considered. What's being considered is permitted uses that can happen on this property. So what's already in the code is still permitted, with the exception of what is being considered tonight is the removal of conference center and the addition of catering facility. And it's kind of in its place, but in a different format. All the other permitted uses, whether they're permitted or not permitted in that zoning district, stay the same. Those are the 2 that are changing.
Does anyone else have a question for the planner? Well, I need you to wrap it up though, because we got to get this going. It's not.
Yeah, well, I kind of thought it was a major change, but has anybody walked the property this week? I haven't, so I'm just asking.
This is a town-wide code change.
Yeah, but looking at this one parcel in particular, it just seemed that
And again, this moved from that one parcel to your point, to the earlier question, it moved to the entire RD10 district, right? What happened, or that initial sketch plan application kind of brought to light this conference center being a permitted use. That we've done initial analysis of that to the extent that we could with the sketch plan information that was provided, but that has been abandoned and withdrawn. Even if it wasn't, all of those applications would be their own review. So to your point, likely if a project on that parcel or any other parcel in the RD10 district that is eligible, site plan visits and all of that is usually, and to the earlier comment from the town board member, and site visits like that, identification of key areas and things like that, that is always done on a parcel by parcel basis.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's
Sorry?
It's clustered housing lab.
In the RD10 district already, you have a fellow resident who is saying that it is.
It is. I was looking at the code earlier tonight. It's included in that. Mr. Nolan?
So anyone who owns 100 acres put a facility on the production facility, like a catering facility, anyone around the town, all those 36 potential sites.
The 20, yeah.
So
If
theoretically,
they have frontage on a county or state road.
Yeah.
and how many, figure out that.
Right.
I think 25 parcels.
So say 25 parcels.
Mhm.
So we could theoretically have 25 catering facilities.
That's,
Similar.
yeah, I mean, but like, there's also like animal hospitals and things like that permitted. You don't have an animal hospital on every property in the RD10 district, right? So.
So to all our 10, correct? Of 100 acres.
The text amendment is to the RD10 district, the entire RD10 district, yes.
That's great. And what I would like to know, this is, how is a production facility, like a catering facility, it's a production facility, compatible with anything that's rural?
So let's.
Because a farm is a rural production facility, but it's not a catering. It doesn't, they're two different types of production.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful.
How is that compatible? You can say it's compatible, but please explain how it is compatible.
Yeah, and I think this will be helpful to go to the actual local law and read the definition of it, because that's where I think that you can have catering facility in one community that's defined different than catering facility in another community, right? So the question, sorry, I haven't been doing your thing. The question was, I apologize. The question was, how is a catering facility compatible with these agricultural uses? So the definition of catering facility that's proposed in the code is a facility providing gathering place for the conduct of scheduled events such as parties, weddings, banquets, business meetings, and similar events, and for food and beverage for invited guests, not to include bar, tavern, or restaurant open to the public, though sometimes operated in tandem there within.
So wait.
So that's the definition. So that's the definition of catering facility.
If there's a rural piece of property that doesn't have that, that's rural. You put a facility in that, it's no longer rural. It's a production site.
I'll point out, though, that conference center is currently permitted there.
And I think that would ultimately.
No change to the.
That would ultimately be to the decision of your zoning officer, right? When they come in, this definition does not talk about production, right? Like outside
People that
of
are
production
speaking
for these
should
events.
Identify themselves so it can be
Okay, I
tracked.
didn't know
And-
enough.
Yeah.
So, it's inherently not compatible.
I don't see.
To put a production facility across the road from us, we would argue it's not compatible. And we were successful in doing that with the compressor center, with the pipelines, and with other things that were bought that they tried to bring into this town, which were not compatible. And I don't see how this is compatible.
I don't see anything in this definition of catering facility that is saying production facility.
If it produces something, it's production.
A farm produces something.
Yeah, it's a production.
Is this heading towards being a debate?
Yeah, that's my concern here. If you have technical questions about what was presented by the planner here, I will allow that, but we need to move on and.
Just real quick, for point of clarification, is it the case that we don't know how many acres are affected or potentially affected by this amendment? Is that what I heard?
No, you know that information.
So
That was in
how
the
many
mem-
acres is it?
The memorandum provided, I have a map.
It's going to require some research. We can get that number for you. You know, we don't have
see how
that.
that's-
you know.
We know what the entire RD10 district is, right? You have a map of that, of what
Yeah.
parcels are contained within there.
We're not going to answer that question tonight. No.
That number, I assume, and I am not an engineer who is capable of operating the software that does it. However, that mappage that's been presented, by tracking the borders of it, I believe that the number of acres can be easily calculated.
Absolutely. But it's not something we're going to do here tonight. Paul,
Just clarification. Did you say traffic standpoint there will not be increasing traffic?
So the question was, did you say from a traffic standpoint, there will not be an increase of traffic on Brusgill Road? So what's said in the Part 3 EAF, and again, the questions in the EAF, will there be a significant adverse environmental impact, right? EAF doesn't say, will there be any impact? Because anything has an impact, right? Everything has an impact. There's no change you could ever do that would not have some kind of impact. So the criteria and the threshold for seeker review is, will there be a significant adverse negative environmental impact? And so the analysis that was done for this kind of level of legislative change was looking at the change, right? So we're going from conference center, which is a permitted use, to catering facility. So that is the change being considered. And the analysis of looking at the anticipated trips generating by those uses is less for catering facility. We then also looked at the capacity of the roads in terms of what is the current daily trips happening on the roads versus what does the county or state say a road of this size and this dimension can handle. And none of the roads that were impacted by this that are in the RD10 district were close to capacity, right? So if you had a road that was close to capacity and that was in this district, and then we're saying we're adding a use that could have an impact on additional capacity, that's something that then you would dive in and evaluate. But so that was what was said at this level in terms of the use being considered is anticipated to have smaller generation, and the roads right now, based on the data that's available, are not close to the capacity that they can handle based on state guidelines. So that's what's kind of said in the EAF.
no, mess behind you.
You were hired as a planner.
Yes. Yep.
Look at the specific legislation of going from 100 acres to 75 acres.
We were hired to look at the proposed local law, which is eliminating conference center use and putting in a new definition and a new use for catering facility, and then adding regulations for that. So we were charged to look at the entire local law as it was proposed when we came in.
Charged with looking at changing it from conference center to catering facility, but not looking at from 100 to 75.
When we started reviewing, the local law was already drafted and it was in there as 50 acres. So one of our first memos, the March 14th memo, we actually did encourage it to be increased to 75 acres there was a draft. It was never adopted, but there was a draft, and that's what we as the planner, there was a proposed law. There was a proposed draft law.
So you haven't just looked at both.
We did. Then we followed up in our next memo and we looked at what the change was of if the lot area is 75 as a minimum, how many parcels are impacted by that?
Look like, and again, not measuring anything, but over
Yeah.
50% of the town are consent.
Mhm.
And so this is a major change to the whole town of Unionville. And I'm going to say that my guess is that the majority of people who live in Unionville are not aware that this huge change about the acreage is happening in Unionville. And that's good.
Again, and I'll just say, I will just say that focusing on just the change from 100 acres to 75 acres and not looking at all the additional criteria that were placed on consideration of this use, I just think is unfair to what is actually being considered by the town board.
And there are a lot of parcels. that county road. And it's a very rural area.
And they could be,
They need to know the existing house.
and they could be potentially developed as a conference center right now with no limit to the square footage of that building and no limit to the number of units in that building.
Okay, I'm gonna allow the last question here.
Okay.
Well, narrow it down, please.
Did you take into account while making those statements and preparing this memorandum, that conference centers are only allowed on 100-acre parcels and opening it up to 75-acre parcels? By just simple nature, including more properties available to this use is making it more intense on all these roads.
So-
And every other thing that you've mentioned.
To be fair, we evaluated by the multiplier, right? So ITE, International Transportation Engineers, has a multiplier that you associate with various uses, right? So they look at a number of different sites that are conference centers, that are these different facilities, and they create a multiplier. And that multiplier is then applied to the square footage or the number of units. There's various things you can apply it to. So by using the multiplier, you're looking at a little bit more of apples to apples rather than. We definitely considered the properties being impacted, absolutely, and that's been stated multiple times that that's in the memo.
Okay, that's it, folks. Jim, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, if there are no further comments that.
Right, I'll open the floor to comments. Yes, ma'am. You have to.
Before you make your comment, I'll just add one thing. It's about just under 5,000 acres affected. Just.
I'm Lynn Nolan. I live at 2363 Clove Road. I've been here 37 years with my husband. I want to address two things that were brought up just now. One is the noise level. We live in a very quiet area. Unfortunately, I can hear a motorcycle from where the traffic circle was to where I live coming down the road. And that's 3 miles away. I can hear my neighbor's cows. That's 1.5 miles up the road from me. I can hear the Pauling train. The noise travels in this area for some reason. The other thing is the traffic. When we first moved up here, Clove Road was a very quiet road. I used to do my exercise walk on it every day. And then they built a Stop and Shop down the road. The trucks and the traffic increased immensely. If you put this catering facility there, you're going to have trucks coming in for delivery. You're going to have more traffic. I was almost killed on Brusgill Road at the S-turn 35 years ago. It's a very, very dangerous road, and people speed on it. And I think the more traffic, the worse it is. And I totally do not support this endeavor. And I hope you will not.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments that have not spoken yet? Yes.
Hi there. I'm Heidi Tucci, 95 Bloomer Road. I was not really aware of this issue until I heard it word of mouth. And I understand that you're saying it's online, but there's a whole lot of stuff online. And I don't sit in my kitchen Googling catering facility near me on a regular basis. So I'm not hearing a lot of positivity coming from this section of the room. And for each person that has spoken negatively against this, I can think of about 20 more that feel the same way. And my comment to the board is, you were all elected to serve. It seems to me that this is not serving any of your constituents here. So who are you serving?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with a comment? Okay, Jim?
Yeah, so you're purposely going to keep the hearing open in order to work your way through the environmental issues. And so the next substantive thing you would do would be to consider the environmental part two, the part three, the negative declaration, and the narrative. And that's the next resolution you have in front of you. But in looking at those documents, the question, as several people have said, is, has the board taken a hard look? That's what you're required to do in making those decisions. So the immediate issue is whether anything that has been presented or that you've seen in the record that's been put together presents a potential issue to you that you think has not been adequately presented and developed to you so that you can say, I took a hard look. You want to be able to say before you vote on the environmental that you took a hard look. So with that said, as I mentioned, the next step would be to vote on the environmental resolution. And my only comment on that is that when you can vote on that this evening, certainly. The documents that were presented to you were documents that were presented in draft. They were not fait accompli, but they are a draft. It's your prerogative after taking a hard look to adopt them or not adopt them. One of the suggestions was made that you defer making those environmental decisions tonight, and that is certainly up to the board. So the first thing is, do you need more information to take a hard look? The second thing is, do you want to vote this evening on the environmental issues?
Now, we've been working on this for nearly 2 years now. We have turned over every stone there is to be turned. And it just, I'm prepared to vote on the environmental assessment because we have done a thorough job on it.
As am I, for the record.
I think at this point I will introduce the resolution.
I think we should table it. I think you can say we beat this like a dead horse, but there's so much opposition out here. There's so many questions. There's a lot of good points brought up tonight. I think we should all take a breath. There's no project on the table. There's nothing pressing that we have to get this done for. There's no reason to push it off or to not push it off, excuse me. So I think we should table it.
Well, I'm going to read the resolution. If it gets seconded, then we'll vote on it.
Did you close? No, you're going to keep the public
keep
hearing
that
open
until we,
after
yeah.
this part.
Right. Okay, resolution of Unionville Town Board to adopt secret full environmental assessment form, FEAF. Part 2, Part 3, and negative declaration notice of determination of non-significance in the matter of the local law, amending zoning code Article 10, 210-86, 210-56, and attachment 210-3 relating to the establishment of a special permit in the RD10 district for catering facilities with a temporary lodging component and the elimination of conference centers as permitted use in the RD10 district. The following resolution, well, this will come out later. Whereas the Unionville Town Board, with the assistance of its consultants, has drafted a proposed local law to amend zoning code Article 11, 210-86, 210-56E, and attachment 210-3 to establish a special permit in the RD10 district for catering facilities with a temporary lodging component and to eliminate conference centers as an allowed use in the RD10 district. And whereas pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, the town board on October 2nd, 2024 reviewed a full environmental assessment form, FEAF, and determined that adopting the proposed local law was a type 1 action for SECRA purposes, and determined that it would be the SECRA lead agency for the purposes of conducting and coordinating the environmental review of the action on behalf of all involved agencies. And whereas no involved or interested agencies objected to the town board serving as the SECRA lead agency for the action, the town board initiated a coordinated review by distributing relevant secret documentation to all potentially involved and interested agencies. And whereas the name and address of the lead agency is the Town of Unionville Town Board, 249 Duncan Road, LaGrangeville, New York, 12540, and responsible officer is Steve Fraser, Town of Unionville Supervisor, with a telephone number of 845-724-5600. And whereas SECRA and its implementing regulations in 6 NYCRR Part 617 require a lead agency to undertake a thorough review of a proposed action's potentially significant adverse environmental impacts prior to any discretionary approvals being granted by the town board or any other involved agency. And whereas the SECRA regulations provide for the type 1 action, the lead agency making a determination of significance must, 1, consider the action as defined in section 617.2B and 617.3G of SECRA. 2, review the EAF, the criteria for determining significance contained in SECRA, and any other supporting information to identify the relevant areas of environmental concern. 3, thoroughly analyze the identified relevant areas of environmental concern to determine if the action may have a significant adverse impact on the environment. And 4, set forth its determination of significance in a written form containing a reasoned elaboration and providing reference to any supporting documentation. And whereas the SECRA regulations also provide that to determine whether a proposed type 1 action may have a significant adverse impact on the environment, the impacts may be reasonably expected to result from the proposed action must be compared against the criteria in section 617.7 C1 of the SECRA regulations. And whereas the town board had reviewed part 1 of the SECRA FEAF for the action as most recently updated, revised, and authorized for execution by the supervisor on January 21st, 2026. And whereas on January 21st, 2026, the town board reviewed and considered the part 2 SECRA FEAF provided by the town's consultants. And whereas the town board's planning consultant has prepared a FEAF part 3 form and narrative attachment for the board's review and consideration, whereas the town board's planning consultant has further prepared a negative declaration notice of determination of non-significance for the board's review and consideration. Whereas the town board has reviewed all recommendation, analysis, and supporting documentation, including the full record of the minutes, hearings, and submissions on earlier iterations of this local law. Memoranda prepared by KRARC planning consultants dated January 20th, 2025, March 14th, 2025, April 21st, 2025, September 17, 2025, compiled maps from the Dutchess County Natural Resource Inventory Environmental Mapper Tool and Traffic Data. Memoranda prepared by Renia Engineering Design dated January 9, 2025 and October 24, 2025. All documents involved in the 2 reintroductions of the local law, November 20th, 2024 and April 16th, 2025. The comments made to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development of the Town of Unionville Planning Board, all written submissions and oral comments made regarding the proposed action and now abandoned Freihofer parcel project. During the duly noticed public hearings, October 16th, 2024, December 4th, 2024, February 5, 2025, May 21, 2025, which hearing was held open to June 4th, 2025, and July 16th, 2025, and February 4th, 2026, and all reports and records were compiled and indexed at the regular town board meeting on January 21st, 2026. And whereas the town board considered and evaluated to the extent possible the potential environmental impacts of a now abandoned project described in the sketch site plan for the Freihofer parcel as submitted on March 12, 2024 to the Unionville Planning Board, which review and consideration is described at length in the FEAF Part 3 narrative. And whereas the Town of Unionville Town Board as lead agencies for the environmental review of the action has identified the relevant areas of environmental concern reflected in the draft FEAF Part 3, a negative declaration as described in all relevant supporting information and documentation, and fully discussed and evaluated same at its regularly scheduled meeting on February 4, 2026. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board adopts the FEAF Part 2 and authorizes the supervisor to execute the same behalf of the town board. Be it further resolved that the town board adopts the FEAF Part 3 and narrative attachment and authorizes the supervisor to sign Part 3 of the FEAF on behalf of the town board. Be it further resolved that after reviewing FEAF Part 1, 2, and 3, and all supporting documentation is described herein, and after reviewing criteria for determining significance set forth under Section 617.7 C1 of the secret regulations and analyzing the relevant areas of the environmental concern, the town board determines that the proposed project will not result in any significant adverse impact on the environment. And the town board therefore adopts and issues a negative declaration for the action, concluding that the action will not create any significant adverse environmental impacts, and that a draft environmental impact statement, EIS, will not be prepared. Be it further resolved that the town board adopts and incorporates herein by reference the attached written negative declaration for the ACTA. Be it further resolved that the town board directs its secretary to file, distribute, and publish the attached negative declaration as required by 6 NYCRR Law 617.12 of the secret regulations, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. Second on that, please.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Harrington is absent. Councilman Redinger.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Councilman McGivney.
Aye.
Councilman Derland.
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make the motion.
But it's done. Is this a quorum? Did you declare a quorum?
We did that when we opened the meeting.
What is it?
3. I will entertain, we've got a motion on the floor to close the public hearing. Second, okay, all in favor of that? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. At this point, the public hearing is over and we will proceed with our business meeting.
Do you have anything to, Mr. Supervisor, do you have anything to advise? Do you have anything to tell the public about when this matter might be back before the town board?
Yeah, it may be before us at our next meeting on February 18th.
Thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute recess here. Resume the meeting.
Make the motion.
Second,
I guess second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Aye.
opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll open the meeting here with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, motion to approve the minutes for January 7 meeting.
Make that motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. I'm just going to keep this one brief. We had a major snowstorm since our last meeting, and I think our highway department and parks department did a good job of keeping the roads and the town facilities and fire departments opened up so they could continue to do business. I want to thank them for that. Councilman Redinger, anything to report?
Not much. I forwarded the board information on the Highland Compact that I had advised I was speaking about last week for everybody to consider. So,
Okay, thank you. Councilman Derlin?
Really just dealing with the RD10 issues and reading through all the paperwork that we've been getting over the last few weeks. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Councilman McGivney.
I'd just like to echo Supervisor Frazier's praise of both the Highway Department and his crew and Vinny and the Parks crew. That was a pretty big storm. We haven't had a storm like that in about 10 years, and they did a great job keeping up with it and the cleanup afterwards. And I'd just like to commend them for that. And that's all I have for this week.
Okay, thank you. Town clerk report.
Thank you. So regarding website postings, I know there was a lot of comments made earlier at the public hearing and also speaking with a resident. I just wanted to let the public know that all public hearing notices are now posted at the bottom of the website. All three boards are posted there: town board, zoning board, and planning board. So if any resident wants information, of course, they're welcome to call town hall, but they are posted at the bottom of the website with information detailing dates, times, and any other documents associated with those hearings.
Okay, thank you.
Secondly,
Oops, I'm sorry.
this one's a fun one. We're bringing back our Valentine's for Veterans event, and that will be held on Valentine's Day here at Town Hall. We're partnering again with Town of Beekman, and it will be February 14th from 10 to 12. So if you want to come by and make a card for a veteran, we will then pass them along to our contact with the VAs, and they will distribute them to every deserving veteran that wants one. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Redinger, would you like to read the recreation report, please?
Sure. Registration is still open exclusively for residents for our summer camp programs. Registration for non-residents opens at midnight on Monday, February 9th. We recommend that parents and guardians make sure they can log in prior to the registration opening or make an account if you do not already have one. Information on the different programs, session dates, and pricing can be found on the Parks and Recreation social media pages and website. Any questions can be directed to the Parks and Recreations office.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Derlin, the Parks report, please.
Sure. Parks report for 2/4/2026. The electric service, the number 11 rental house was upgraded from 150 to 200 amps to accommodate the electric water heater that replaced the oil water heater that had failed. We had a few snowstorms and one very large one. We tried to stay on top of them to keep the 2 fire stations in town able to get their emergency vehicles in and out. On January 28th, the furnace for the number 2 rental house shut down early in the night due to a clog that developed in the fuel line. It was noticed in the morning and we cleared it and restarted the furnace, but then a few of the baseboard pipes had frozen and ruptured. The pipes have been repaired. The plow on our dump truck had a problem developed during the snowstorm that happened on MLK weekend. We were able to get it repaired, though its warranty repaired through its warranty before the large storm, thankfully. Before the snow, we started clearing much of the brush near the stream pavilion, which is on hiatus until the snow melts a bit so we can get back in there. We have just finished stripping and waxing the floor in the large hole.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to add to the furnace shutdown. Since that happened, I have contacted both our alarm company and our HVAC guy. And working with Vinny, we're going to tour the town facilities and install an alarm on the remaining burners that don't have them, so that we get a notice of a failure like that. That happened to occur on one of those single-digit nights.
Of course.
And yeah, we had, pipe failures as a result of it. So
It might be worth to just looking into maybe getting some antifreeze up into those boilers just in case it happens again.
I can ask about that.
The heaters are on the outside wall, so they're generally the first thing to freeze.
Right.
So
I can ask about that as well. Let's see now. Public comment. Oh, did you want to speak, Joe?
I just wanted to give everybody a quick reminder that the Hudson River Housing ADU program that Unionville is enrolled in is currently open. They are taking applications. Basically, if you want to add an ADU to your home or update an existing ADU to code, they will give you a grant up to $125,000 to get that done. And there is eligibility requirements. And then obviously everything would fall back on the town as far as code. So you'd have to obviously meet all that. And then there are additional requirements as well to be eligible. But again, it's a good opportunity. It could help out residents, obviously get a little extra money in their pocket, and it could help out with the housing issue that Dutchess County does face. So, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
we have that information posted on our website if you want to apply for it. Excuse me. Any public comment on agenda items? Okay. New business. LaGrange Youth Baseball, we've sponsored them in the past. They're soliciting again. In the past, we've sponsored 3 teams. It was $750. It has gone up to 800. Wanted to find out if there's any interest in continuing that.
So I'm just curious, so how we sponsor this, what does it look like? Is it the Unionville teams, or do we sponsor a set amount and it goes to the equipment and distributed amongst all of it?
They wanted, excuse me, it actually, the whole thing gets supported, but the most noticeable thing is there's going to be 3 teams wearing Unionville shirts.
Okay.
And they try to focus to, that the kids from Unionville are the ones that are.
That was my
sponsored.
follow-up
Yeah.
question. So there are
Yeah,
substantial
right.
kids, amounts of kids in Unionville proper that are participating in this and
Right.
benefit from the sponsorship, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to get the kids off the computer and away from the electronics and get out on the ball field. So, I mean, I'm in favor of it. I know we've done it in the past.
Right. We used to have rows of photos, the group team photos.
Yeah, there's still some back there, I think.
Yeah. Anything having to add?
I mean, I'm in agreement.
Okay.
We've done it before.
So I'll make the motion then that we go ahead and sponsor the 3 teams as in the past.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. I'll let them know. Okay, old business, boy, oh boy. Last meeting, we discussed transferring some funds back to Equestrian Center. They had collected donations to use as prize money at their competitions that did not get utilized and would like to put it towards this year's events. So we have a resolution here to that effect. Councilman McGivney, would you like to read that, please?
Sure. Town of Unionville, Town Board Resolution number, what's this?
It's 23 or 24. I have to double check, but
23 or 24, we have to double check. Of 2026, resolution amending the 2026 adopted town budget. Whereas the town of Unionville operates an equestrian center as part of its recreational program at Time Warp Park, and whereas the equestrian center has a surplus of funds in the amount of $3,515 at the end of the calendar year 2025, which was deposited into the town's general fund. And whereas the director of the equestrian center has requested that the surplus funds in the amount of $3,515 be returned to the equestrian center to defray the costs of upcoming equestrian events. And whereas the town board desires to amend the budget to allocate the amount of $3,515 from the town's general fund to the equestrian center. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. The recitation is set above set forth and incorporated in this resolution as if they are fully set forth and adopted herein. The town board of the town of Unionville hereby amends the 2026 adopted budget as follows. Appropriations increase from account A7182.4 Equestrian Center contractual expenses in the amount of $3,515. A decrease from account general fund in the amount of $3,515.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Nope. They're doing a bang up job there, so I think we can support them on this. Roll call, please.
Councilman Harrington is absent. Councilman Rettinger.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Councilman McGivney.
Aye.
Councilman Derland.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The highway superintendent mentioned at our last meeting that he has, would like to surplus some equipment. We sent that list out earlier. And this is a resolution to bring that into effect. I'll read this one. Resolution declaring highway department equipment surplus and authorizing its sale at public auction. Whereas the town of Unionville Highway Department currently owns old, worn out and obsolete equipment that cannot be repaired or is too costly to repair, but may have some salvage value. And whereas the town supervisor has declared the following equipment to no longer be useful for town purposes and recommends that the surplus equipment be sold at public auction. A 2010 Dodge 4500. I'm not going to go into the VIN numbers here. 2016 Dodge 5500. 2009 International 7500. 2013 International 7500. 2012 Cam trailer. Old funnel plow, miscellaneous pipes of various sizes, a Lincoln arc welder model 250. Now, therefore, be it resolved as follows. The recitations set forth are incorporated in this resolution as if fully set forth and adopted herein. The town board of the town of Unionville hereby declares the aforementioned equipment to be surplus equipment and authorizes it to be sold at public auction through Absolute Auction and Realty. 45 South Avenue, Pleasant Valley, New York, 12569. The surplus equipment shall be sold in as-is condition without warranty as to its condition. The town supervisor is authorized but not required to set minimum bids for each surplus equipment. The town supervisor is hereby authorized to execute any and all documentation, including Department of Motor Vehicle forms and bill of sale, necessary to transfer the above mentioned vehicles to the successful bidders. Proceeds from the sale of surplus equipment shall first be used to pay for any debt service that is outstanding for the items, and any balance that remains shall be paid into the highway equipment budget line D5130.2. And I'll take a second on that, please.
I'll second.
Okay, I will add to this that there are no monies owed on this equipment, that it's free and clear. There was something else I wanted to mention. Oh,
And I know some of this equipment we have already replaced too.
right. Ed did mention that he would like to hang on to one of the Dodge trucks until we get a replacement for it.
Sure.
So the rest of it will get out, and then he's going to bring to us the specs on what he'd like to replace that truck with. So we have a second on it, and roll call vote, please.
Councilman Harrington is absent. Councilman Rettinger.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Councilman McGivney.
Aye.
Councilman Derland.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move into executive session to discuss threatened litigation over the library copier and a pending lease of real property negotiation. Is there anyone here that would like to make comment on town issues before we go? Okay, when we return, we may make a decision on a phone contract. You're welcome to stay if you like, but that will be the final part of business. Okay, motion to go into executive session, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. We'll return as soon as we can.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, no decisions were made and no funds were allocated. And that does conclude our business for tonight. Our next meeting is here. Oh, yeah, motion to pay the bills, I'm sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Our next meeting is here February 18th at 7:30, and a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.